100 million euros, that's the amount Man United have just paid for Antony. However, many football fans barely have any idea who this guy is. Is he the next Neymar or just another Ben Arfa? And how did the 21-year-old Brazilian find himself at Ajax? Well, looking back at his story so far, it has been something special. From growing up in literal hell to being nearly dismissed from the academy 3 different times to a 10-year-old girl in a way leading him to stardom. His career has been one hell of a journey, and today I'll tell you all about it. Enjoy. As I was saying, Antony's hometown was hell on earth, and that's barely a metaphor. The favela he grew up in was literally called Inferninho. His parents weren't exactly the most miserable in their neighborhood, and Antony was always kept off the streets, but right across from his front door he witnessed drug trafficking every day, and the police raids were at the very least traumatic. Keep in mind, the police don't really hold their fire in these places. Regardless of what he saw at a young age, he and his siblings never lost focus. They sat on the roof of their house looking at the hell down below them, in their own words, talking about winning. And I don't mean on the pitch, it was winning at life, and to them, that meant leaving that place forever. Back then, despite being only 5 or 6 years old, his aunt would bring him to every São Paulo match, always sitting among the ultras. They say he knew every song before he could even string 2 sentences together on his own. From birth, football meant everything to him. He dreamed of one day being on the other side of that fence, to be an idol for the fans like him, to make the other ultras proud. After all, at that age he had already joined the futsal team after a scout found him at a local pitch. And the thing about Antony was that his upbringing with some seriously strict parents would not tolerate any tomfoolery, as they knew damn well what happened to foolish kids in a favela made him a real hard worker while managing to keep that edge, that Brazilian flair. And so, at 12 years old, he had his big break. He went on trial and his dream of wedding São Paulo scholars finally became true, but reality is that they were always on the fence about him. He wasn't a prodigy, nobody was betting $1 that he would become a big name, but well, there was potential, so he kept playing, and 3 years later that was enough to convince them to get him a room at their academy. Once there, everyone loved Antony, even the staff and his teammates became like brothers to him, but even then, well, as he said it himself, I didn't play much, at all. I was pretty much on the reserves. I could see I wasn't cutting it. One day there was a big youth tournament and the ultras would be there, my own hand would be there. It was all that I had ever dreamed about. I gave it my all and still didn't make the list. I cried, and it wasn't just a single tear. I was on my knees. As bad as that might have felt, I can't even begin to wonder what it must have felt once he saw his name on the list of players to be dismissed. It seemed like a miracle that he was kept in the team. It only happened because the staff had talked to the coach and insisted that he stayed. And if it seemed like a miracle then, it was even more impressive when it happened a second and a third time. If it weren't for the fact that everyone at the academy was so fond of Antony, he would probably have been out of the team on the first strike. Regardless, soon after he began playing like never before. At 16, 17, suddenly his growth became exponential. Everyone was in awe, and by 18, he was taken to the first team alongside Elinho and Igor Gomes, 2 of his best friends at the academy. To live through something like that alongside your friends, it seemed like a fairy tale. At first, I guess it was like Cinderella. As wild as it seems, despite being at the academy for so long, Antony still didn't own a decent pair of boots, and his mom had to borrow them from a store she worked at every time he played. But just like Cinderella, after 3 matches as the team was to go on pre-season to the USA, the clock struck midnight and the magic began to wear off. Antony was not called up for the tour, was dropped from the team and sent back to the under-20s as he was supposedly needed for this big tournament, the Copinha. He was in shock. It was nothing that he hadn't lived through already, but it hurt. It felt like rejection. Regardless, he put everything into that tournament and something magical happened. In the first 8 matches, Antony scored 3 and assisted 5. They were all man of the match performances, and with the matches playing on TV, a very special fan fell in love with him. Her name was Larissa, a 10-year-old cancer patient. She had already made a few waves online as she slept in her hospital bed surrounded by scarves of São Paulo, saying the team gave her the strength she needed, that as long as they pushed through adversity, so would she. And after writing on her notebook that her biggest dream was to meet Antony, She was the motivation he needed to get back to the top. Sometime along those 8 matches, Antony went to see her. He was completely overtaken by her joy. She became his sidekick. He was always looking for ways to make her happy, and once the day of the final arrived, he was waiting for her to walk onto the pitch alongside him. But even better, he had convinced the entire squad to shave their heads in solidarity to her, and after she made him promise he would score, he not only scored and assisted to win the title, but he did his famous L celebration for the first time, a reference to her name. Antony was the player of the tournament. He had finally played with the ultras watching over him, and he made a friend for life. Besides all of that, he was also immediately brought back to the main team. He saw this as a last chance scenario and gave it everything, even that last bit he didn't even know he had. And with São Paulo struggling massively in the Paulista Championship, he and his 2 friends began getting more and more minutes, culminating in Antony scoring the goal that would ensure their qualification to the final stage of the championship on the very last match. But normally São Paulo would easily qualify, and as the match ended, the ultras weren't happy, booing the players except for, well, Antony and his friends. The moment he greeted them, the boos became cheers. They were the fan favorites, the academy kids who they saw as the revival of a club in great need of one. Seeing this reaction, the coach made the trio regular starters in the final stage, and against all odds, they propelled the club to the final after 16 years without making it to one. The fairy tale had only gotten more fantastic. As Antony said, it will only get better once we're crowned champions. And so the thriller started. The first leg of course finished 0-0. The pressure was now even greater for the second leg, and early into the match, São Paulo concedes. You could see the pain in Antony's face, but still, in a way, it was an opportunity to live out his dream of scoring in a Clásico against Corinthians. And so, as D.E. Lawrence once said, "Men who dream by night awake to find that it was vanity, but the dreamers of day are dangerous men, for they may act upon their dreams with open eyes," and Antony was certainly a dangerous man on that day. Scoring from outside the box, sending the stadium into pandemonium, so much emotion his mom nearly fainted and had to be taken away and given tranquilizers. You gotta feel for her. Her son was a hero, but it didn't last long, at least not long enough. With Wagner Love scoring in the final minute of the match to give the win to Corinthians, Antony was completely distraught. He couldn't let go. He knew the next year he had to come back and win it all. Soon after, he was called up for the Brazilian under-23s, joining them for the old Toulon tournament, scoring 2 goals, one of them the only goal of the final as Brazil won on penalties. He seemed to have a knack for the big moments, and that earned him a permanent spot in the Brazilian Olympic team. However, back at São Paulo, things began slowing down. No goals for 4 months, then comes a tough match against Grêmio. Antony misses a clear goal-scoring chance that could have given his team the win, and then gets a red card. Walking out of the pitch to thousands of fans booing him, the situation was dire. After so many highs, this was a surprising low, every day being accused of being wasteful, of missing chances like no one else. But his reaction to that adversity was what once again proved his greatness. Antony asked the team's main goalkeeper to stay behind every training session and help him become more clinical, and soon after, he broke his goal-scoring drought, literally falling down in tears, pure passion and dedication flowing down onto the pitch, and he didn't stop, scoring 3 more goals and getting 2 assists over the next few matches, being the hero as São Paulo secured a place in the next year's Libertadores. And as the next season started, he would be super busy, first making sure to take some of his money and moving his family to a new home, then playing some qualification matches for the Olympics, eventually debuting in the Libertadores, and above all, with many clubs looking to secure his transfer, he closed the deal with Ajax, planning to join them after summer, meaning first, he would have another shot at the Paulista Championship, but then the world stopped. The year was 2020. I think we all know what happened. After only 4 matches in his new season, Antony would never play for São Paulo again. No second chance at the Paulista Championship, no goodbye to the fans, but at least he promised to come back one day. Regardless of the depressing state of his exit, his €16 million transfer to Ajax left him just 300k short of becoming the most expensive signing the Dutch league had ever seen. But still, to Ajax this was still a big gamble. Who knows what could have happened? He was clearly not very consistent, he had only just turned 20 years old, he had not won a single trophy in his career, and in Europe, everything could be much different. In fact, with the Olympic team, things weren't exactly splendid. The coaching staff had gotten annoyed at how Antony's tendency to cut back instead of attacking the space often killed the team's attacking momentum, and that meant he was dropped for the final match of the qualification against Argentina. It wasn't exactly looking good, but Ajax's coach Ten Hag seemed sure about his new signing, saying, "We hope he will be the next star of Ajax." And yeah, there were a lot of expectations. Some thought it was what David Neres never managed to be. Some thought it was the perfect replacement for Ziyech, who was now off to Chelsea, and it seemed it would be a rough time for Antony, but then, whoa. In his first 21 matches, 9 goals, 8 assists. It seemed that with a couple of words and maybe a couple of screams, Ten Hag had immediately smoothed away many of Antony's rough edges. He now seemed to have much better decision making, he could play on either wing, he finally began using his space in his favor, and he could even help in defense. But yet, he had one final monster to defeat, his inconsistency, and so it bit back. 5 months, 2 goals, 1 assist, from 1 goal contribution every 84 minutes to 1 every 485. A 477% underperformance compared to the previous stage, which was especially odd as Sebastian Haller had arrived in January, with many predicting the two would have combined incredibly. Still, as the season ended, they did win the cup and the league, and with the Olympics coming right after that, though he was still struggling to get on the score sheet, he was easily one of the most memorable players of the tournament, especially as the 1 assist he got came in the final in extra time against Spain to give Brazil the gold medal. Coming on to his second season at Ajax, he wanted 2 things: to improve his consistency and to perform on the international stage. And right on the first month, there were some good signs. 2 assists against Sporting in the Champions League opening match and 2 goals in 3 league matches. This earned him his first call-up to the Brazilian national team, leading manager Tite to claim that it was just like Neymar, as he went on to score on his debut despite only getting 13 minutes on the pitch. This was followed by goals against Dortmund and PSV, then 2 more assists in the second match against Dortmund and a goal against Sporting, totaling 4 goals and 2 assists in 5 Champions League matches, finally starting to spark alongside Haller, who went on to become the only player ever besides Cristiano Ronaldo to score in every single group stage match, an incredible achievement. Back in the league, he would keep going strong, 8 matches, 4 goals and 5 assists, and as it seemed he would go the full length of the season on a high note, who knows, perhaps even be the league's player of the year, it all crumbled, not because of inconsistency, but something else. First, Ajax is surprisingly eliminated by Benfica, then a heated game against Feyenoord ends 3-2 with Antony scoring the winner with 4 minutes to go, securing Ajax's place at the top of the table. But with enough time left for him to hilariously fake an injury after a duel with Malacia and get himself a red card, which is even funnier now that they're teammates. However, it would be in the following match, a pretty much meaningless friendly between Brazil and Bolivia, that Antony would go down to the ground getting injured without any contact and impressively being out for 4 months straight. His season was over, and so were his hopes at any Player of the Year awards, but at least he got the league title, and the injury wasn't enough to stop the transfer rumors. First came Barcelona, and eventually with Ten Hag's move to United, it became more and more obvious that would be Antony's desired destination, but it wouldn't be easy. Ajax were not willing to negotiate, and the player was forced to go on strike, not playing or training as long as they didn't talk to Man United. However, even as the talks began with 2 transfer bids being rejected, one up to €100 million, which would easily make him the league's most expensive player of all time, Antony became even more frustrated, giving an interview in which he would say, "In June I had already told them I wanted to move out of the club, but they didn't listen. Even with offers on the table, nothing. I'm not asking them to let me go for free, I'm asking them to accept the highest bid ever made for an Eredivisie player." As hard as it may have been for Ajax, the player was let go for 100 million euros, the 13th most expensive player in the history of football and Man United's second most expensive ever signing. Ten Hag and Antony reunited in the Premier League with players like Sancho, Casemiro, Varane and Ronaldo alongside them, as well as familiar faces like Malacia and Lisandro Martinez. It is still a big gamble, it could be the next Neymar or just another Ben Arfa, but regardless, a great show is underway.